by Diane. Today we're going to take this quilt top that we've made in a previous program and turn it into a full-fledged quilt. Come along and let's get busy quilting. To get started, we need to decide what kind of batting and backing we're going to use on our quilt. We need a piece of backing and batting at least 12 inches wider on each side, 6 inches all the way around of our quilt top, so that we know we're going to have enough to stick out and not have a shortage somewhere on the quilt when we pin it together. We're going to pin base it. Now, you can either get polyester batting, and this is a low loft. I like to deal with low loft polyester batting. I can quilt it closer together, and it's easier if you're hand quilting. This is cotton batting. We're going to use this today. I like to use cotton if I'm doing something for a baby or if there's anything that I'm worried about flammability with. And also, I just like the way cotton, it has that nice old-fashioned feel to it sometimes. Now, for our backing, we've gotten our batting out of the way. Our backing, you can either use a material that will match the quilt top, and most of the time this is only going to be about 45 inches wide. So you're going to have to piece this somehow on the back to make it wide enough. My quilt top is 53 by 61, so this would not quite be wide enough. What you can do is take a piece of this material longer than the quilt, and then cut another piece that long and half it, and put part down each side. Use a slightly stretchy stitch and cut off the selvages before you attach them, and you shouldn't have too much problem. However, when you do put the quilt together, make sure that the seam lines are an even distance from the edges of the quilt so it'll look good on the back. The other thing that you can use is a wide backing. Now, I like bleached or unbleached muslin. This one is bleached muslin. This one is 90 inches wide. You can get it in 108 or 120 wide if you shop. This one is 90 inches wide, so I know it's going to be plenty wide in one direction. And then I cut it 12 inches wider in the other direction. However, I buy the whole bolt. I know I'm going to use it because I make lots of quilts. And the first time I get the bolt out, I will tear the beginning of the material until it tears from one end to the other. And I know I'm on a straight of grain. Then when I measure for my quilt backing, I will go 12 inches longer than the quilt was wide, and I will nick it, and then I will tear it from that point. And that way I know I have a good squared up piece of backing, and I won't wind up with that rick-rack that you get when you cut it straight across and the grain line is not right. So be careful when you're purchasing your backing. Make sure you get plenty wide on that because they do cut it at the fabric store, and you may wind up getting home and having that rick-rack effect and it not be wide enough in the narrower parts. So now we have our backing and we have our batting, and we're going to get ready to pin base this quilt together. So get ready. In order to prepare our quilt top to pin base it, we need a few basic tools. We need some safety pins. I like #1 safety pins that are stainless steel, or they say they will not rust. You're going to need a lot of safety pins. The bigger the quilt, the more pins you will need. You're going to pin base all the layers. I call it a hand width, about this far apart, about every 5 to 6 inches in all directions. So we need a lot of safety pins. Now these are #1s, and that means it's about 1 inch across here. A lot of people want to use number 2 or 3 pins because they're easier to open and close. However, when you do that, it gets in the way of your machine when you start to quilt it. So we want a small pin that we can pin that will not get in our way when we're going to quilt this quilt, but we can put a lot of them in there. So get you some good pins. If you want #2s, that's fine. They also make pins that the pointed section of it is bent, and it makes it a little easier to go down, come up, and then close the pin. They also make some tools that make this easier, and I'll go over those as we go along. The other thing we're going to need are clamps. You're going to need a lot of clamps. You're going to clamp it all along the sides of the table when you get all the layers tied. These are large, I believe it's 2-inch clamps from off a supply place. You can get them in little round containers of 12. Get you several containers. They're $3 or $4 a container, so they're not that much. And we're going to use a table that the edge of it is narrow enough that these clamps will clamp on. And we're going to clamp all the layers around the table in several different places on all 4 sides, and make sure all our layers are straight and don't have any wrinkles in them before we get started. and then we can quilt it and we'll have a good quality product when we get done. So let's get busy. We need a table with a lip around it like this that our clamps can clamp onto. And we also need a table that is as large as it can be and still be just smaller than the quilt top that we're going to work with, because we have to be able to get the quilt top to reach all the edges. This is a 3-foot by 4-foot tabletop. I have some 4-foot by 4-foot. I would use the largest one that I have, and right now this is the one that's available to me, so I'll use it. But it's 3 feet by 4 feet, so we will clamp part of the quilt top and then shift it and clamp the next section. And the larger the quilt, the more times you will shift it and start pinning. But we'll pin baste all the layers together.